Hi, I'm Yitzhak Berger. I teach Hebrew at Risha. Parashat Bo, of course, contains the latter part of the story of the plagues, and then the exodus from Egypt thereafter. And a number of the psukim that appear in this parsha are ones that are reproduced in the Haggadah, particularly in the section of the Haggadah that speaks of the four sons. One of the well-known psukim is where the Torah says, you should tell your children that it's because of this. Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeiti miMitzrayim. Typically we associate this when we read the Haggadah and when we read the Torah with the Korban Pesach. Right? Here, the Israelites leaving Egypt are engaging in the celebratory ceremony, eating the Korban Pesach. And here we are telling the child that God did this to me, this Yetziat Mitzrayim happened so that we would be able to do things like the Korban Pesach. We tell the wicked child that if he were there, he would not have been able to participate, because it's Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li. This is for people who merit participating in such things. It's interesting that in the verses themselves, this verse Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeiti miMitzrayim is specifically about, apparently, the 7-day holiday of Chag HaMatzot. Chag HaPesach, referring to the shorter holiday that surrounds the Korban itself, whereas the 7-day Chag HaMatzot is the holiday that follows. The Torah tells you 7 days eat matzah, and in connection with that, apparently, tell your children that it's because of this that God did what He did for me when He took me out of Egypt. What then is the connection specifically between the Chag HaMatzot and what God did for the Israelites when He took them out of Egypt? Why the verse Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li specifically here? Does the zeh refer specifically to matzah rather than Pesach? Typically we assume that it does refer to the Korban Pesach as well. But the question has to arise as to why it's linked specifically here to Chag HaMatzot. When we speak about the things that we eat on the Leil HaSeder, or that were eaten in the Leil HaSeder at the time when there was a Korban, right? The Korban Pesach, of course, right, is something that free people can engage in. It's a celebration. Then there's the matzah, the moror, the fact that it has to be eaten b'chipazon. And most of these things have a dual meaning. Right? The maror, which we of course primarily associate with the bitterness of life in Egypt, is also suggested that it refers to simply a vegetable that's eaten along with the Korban Pesach, the way a free person would partake in a meal of importance. The same with eating b'chipazon. Eating b'chipazon, and on the one hand, can refer to the fact that the Israelites are still running away. They're still slaves. They've got to get out quickly. They're not being allowed to eat slowly. But at the same time, b'chipazon is said, perhaps on a simpler level, to mean that they were able to eat with alacrity, with a certain verve that comes with being free people. What's interesting is that the matzah, which perhaps on the one hand, right, is one of the things that you want to eat with your meal, so in that respect does contribute to the notion of a meal that a free person eats with all of its trappings. But matzah per se, the bread that was not allowed to rise, that per se does not appear to have any particular positive associations. Matzah recalls the lechem oni, right? The kind of bread that was eaten in Egypt when the Israelites were the equivalent of aniyim. They were downtrodden. It's the kind of bread that a poor person eats. And it also reflects the fact that when they were leaving, they were being chased out. The Egyptians did not give them an opportunity to have their bread rise. The Egyptians are trying to catch them, and they have to run away. The Chag HaMatzot, therefore, which you would think would be the 7-day holiday that marks the cherut, the freedom, the celebration, you would think that it would be associated specifically with the positive, has as its symbol specifically that prop, all of whose trappings seem to be negative. Lechem oni, right, the bread of the poor or afflicted, and at the same time the bread that's not given an opportunity to rise because you're running away. What then is it about the 7-day holiday that really belongs with the motif of matzot? I think one can suggest that the reality is that would have been quite dangerous, in fact, if the ultimate holiday where we celebrate and mark the Exodus would have been one where we only call attention to the Cherut, or call attention to the Cherut, the freedom, exclusively, as if to say, we're now free people, we can eat how we wish, we can eat with our vegetables, we can eat our meat, and we don't have to worry about anything. Specifically, the matzah was chosen as the symbol of the Chag HaMatzot precisely because the ultimate message of the Exodus needs to be a recollection that things are not always so simple, that you are not always a ben chorin, a free person. And as a result, you need to realize that your freedom was a result of God's munificence in taking us out of Egypt. The 7-day holiday of Chag HaMatzot is a celebratory holiday. It does mark the Cherut, but it's one that makes you remember. It makes sure that you will remember that you're only a ben chorin because God took you out of the state where you were eating lechem oni, and you had to rush out of Egypt with His help because the Egyptians were following you. And indeed, when the verse then says you should make a holiday of Shivat Yamim, Chag HaMatzot, Matzot Ye'achel Eit Shivat Hayamim, 7 days of eating matzah, that's what that holiday is all about. Lo Ye'ra'eh lecha sa'or b'chol kulecha, no chametz at all, only matzah. And it's in that connection where you tell your children, Ba'avur zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeitiv mitzrayim, it's because of this that I got out of Egypt. We didn't get out of Egypt to be b'nei chorin, to be free people who are unaware and who don't remember what it was like to be slaves. We got out of Egypt so that we should be able to be free people, always marking in our minds the fact that that freedom arose from the divine help that engendered the Yetziat Mitzrayim. Shabbat Shalom.